Everyone in this building tonight has 2 appointments which you are unable to put in your diary. It is appointed to man to die once, and after that, the judgment. These are the 2 appointments. They are both particular days on God's calendar. The day I end this mortal life, and the day I appear to tell him what I did with the mortal life he gave me. Why is judgment necessary? The answer is twofold. First, because of the injustice of this life, and secondly, because of the justice of God. The injustice of this life is such that if God is not going to put things right in the future, then the whole universe is morally crazy. For in this world, it is not true that the good prosper and the wicked decline. In this world, many wicked people die peacefully and get away with it, and many innocent people suffer. The injustice of this world demands that somewhere, someday, everything is put right, and that Napoleon and Father Damien do not finish in the same place, and that Herod and John the Baptist, and that Jezebel and Mary Magdalene, and Hitler and Albert Schweitzer should not receive the same future destiny. The injustice of this world demands the day of judgment, but so does the justice of God. The justice of God demands that if God is good, then he must put things right. He must reward the innocent and punish the guilty, or he's not a good God. He must vindicate himself, because many of the things he allows in this world are unjust. And God must vindicate himself, show himself to be in the right. He must vindicate Jesus Christ, his Son, because the last glimpse this world had of Jesus was of a criminal being put to death, and that was unjust. And someday God must reveal that his Son was innocent to the whole world, which is why there has to be a day of judgment. People say, well, why doesn't God just judge us the moment we die? The answer is it's got to be in public. I sat in the public gallery of the Old Bailey most of Thursday. I'm glad there was a public gallery to sit in, and I'm glad that justice was being done publicly. One day there's got to be a day when justice is seen to be done, or it's not full justice. Justice has to be seen. There's got to be a public day. Now, who will the judge be on that day? Here I've got both good and bad news for you. The good news is that it will be a human being who will sit in the judge's chair. A human being. You will never be able to stand there and say, you don't understand. You don't understand. Do you remember this thing that I read to you once? God leads a pretty sheltered life. At the end of time, millions of people were scattered on a great plain before God's throne. Some of the groups near the front talked heatedly, not with cringing shame, but with belligerence. How can God judge us? How can he know about suffering? Snapped a joking brunette, and she jerked back a sleeve to reveal a tattooed number from a Nazi concentration camp. We endured terror, beatings, torture, death. In another group, a black man lowered his shirt collar. What about this, he demanded, showing an ugly rope burn. Lynched for no crime but being black. We've suffocated in slave ships, been wrenched from loved ones, toiled till only death gave release. And far across the plain were hundreds of such groups. Each one had a complaint against God for the evil and suffering he permitted in his world. How lucky God was to live in heaven, where all was sweetness and light, where there was no weeping, no fear, no hatred. Indeed, what did God know about man and what he had been forced to endure in this world? After all, God leads a pretty sheltered life, they said. So each group sent out a leader, chosen because he had suffered most. There was a Jew, a Negro, an untouchable from India, an illegitimate, a person from Hiroshima, and one from a Siberian slave camp. And in the center of the plain they consulted with each other. At last they were ready to present their case. It was rather simple. Before God would be qualified to be their judge, he must endure what they had endured. Their decision was that God should be sentenced to live on earth as a man. But because he was God, they set certain safeguards to be sure he could not use his divine powers to help himself. Let him be born a Jew, said one. Let the legitimacy of his birth be doubted, so that none will know who is really his father. Let him champion a cause so just but so radical that it brings down hate, condemnation, and eliminating efforts of every major tradition and established religious authority. Let him try to communicate God to man. Let him be betrayed by his dearest friends. Let him be indicted on false charges, tried before a prejudiced jury, and convicted by a cowardly judge. Let him see what it is to be terribly alone and completely abandoned by every living thing. Let him be tortured and left to die. Let him die the most humiliating death with common thieves. And as each leader pronounced his portion of the sentence, loud murmurs of approval went up from the throng of people. And when the last had finished pronouncing sentence, there was a long silence. No one uttered a word. No one moved. For suddenly, everybody knew God had already served his sentence. God has appointed a judge, and it's a man. And it's a man who's been tempted in all points like as we are. And it's a man who knows what it is to be alone, and he's going to judge. Most understanding judge there's ever been. Who's in the dock? The answer is every human being who's ever lived.